The chair recognizes the Honorable Jim Runestad.
Well, I made myself a promise that I would try to keep my speech 3 to 4 minutes shorter than my good friend and Minority Vice Chair Tim Greimel, and I think I've succeeded. Wow, what an incredible honor and privilege this experience has been. I never dreamt I would have traveled so far as to become one of 110 individuals out of 10 million citizens here in the state of Michigan to become part of the Michigan State House of Representatives. The road leading to this day occurred about 25 years ago when I was sitting on my dad's desk pontificating about this and that issue that politicians were screwing up, and my dad said to me, Jim, I'm tired of hearing this. I don't want to hear it. If you want to fix this, stop talking and do something. I asked what he meant, and he said, you just talk about these issues. I don't see you doing anything. The next day, I was on the way home, I was struck by his comments and thought about it. The next day, I began looking to get involved. That night on the porch eventually delivered me here to this day to this lectern. So after 4 marvelous years in this office, I thought long and hard about the topic for my farewell address. My inclination would be to relate some amusing anecdotes while in office. If you look where I sit with Shane, Mike, and Joe, you know that I have a ton of great material. However, that would fail my dad's injunction to use this very precious time not to just talk, but to try to make a difference. To paraphrase Edmund Burke, the evil hand is constantly on the move, and the only thing it needs to succeed is for good people to say and do nothing. So despite my desire to deliver a lighthearted speech, I feel compelled to deliver this message, which I believe impacts our nation's future more than any other. So I begin. The content of the character versus identity politics and political correctness. There's often great trepidation in addressing this issue because it can be among the most dangerous conversations you can have in America. It is fraught with destructive landmines that can blow apart families, careers, friendships, reputations, all with one small slip of the tongue. One phrase not properly calculated, one not properly pondered, one sentence that could be misconstrued, misunderstood, mischaracterized. A word twisted out of its proportions or context could surely lead to at least ridicule, derision, loss of position, reputation, perhaps even absolute personal destruction. I'm certainly not alone in this anxiety. The Cato Institute released a national poll in October of 2017 that found an astonishing 71% of Americans believe political correctness is silencing discussions society needs to have. While 58% said that they have political views they are afraid to share. The majority of Democrats, 53%, said they do not feel any need to self-censor, while a supermajority of Republicans, 73%, and independents, 58%, felt the need to keep some of their political beliefs to themselves. So with that caveat, I dive in. Martin Luther King's content of the character is about the poison of judging people by external characteristics. Characteristics like a person's race or sex, which is an intrinsic external condition. These prejudices are among the oldest and most pernicious in history, as around the globe there have always been differences between individuals and groups to differentiate themselves, to provide demagogues an opportunity to hate, divide, and conquer. Groups can be hated because you have a perceived grievance against them, or you fear them, or you despise them. These emotions are almost always driven by clever demagogues who benefit and profit from whipping up that hatred. While many would like to simplify this topic with one-dimensional formulas, I have read a lot of history, and I notice often those who inhibit the commanding heights of a society can drive the prejudices as easily or more so than those arising from the masses. Over centuries, the victims and perpetrators can be immutable. Hate can be directed at this group today and that group tomorrow. America has the most to lose from these demagogues, as we are the most diverse society in all of history. As the popular culture continues to morph and change over the years, if we do not contain this, we will reach a point where no one will be safe except the demagogues. Today, you might be attacked for being in the majority or the minority, or for being male or female. Much of the media throughout its history has been complicit in the spreading of these dangerous trends. Usually, they follow the prevailing culture. They look to what is acceptable within the culture for their touchstone of what is permissible. A recent example I recall from this cultural phenomena is the hiring of Sarah Jeong as the newest member of the New York Times editorial board. Now, keep in mind the New York Times is often referred to as the gray lady, the paper of record for the nation. Before hiring Jeong, she wrote on Twitter in July 2014, "Oh man, it's kind of sick how much joy I get being cruel to old white men." This kind of poison today has become completely acceptable in our media culture. Jeong's twittering provided many similar posts for the Times to consider, and they were okay with it. They elevated her to one of the highest media posts in the nation, with nary a peep from the rest of mainstream media. The crickets from our media at large on these issues of hate infused into the very veins of our nation, our diverse nation, by the New York Times and other outlets, is an illustration of their complicity and hypocrisy, as they have abrogated their responsibilities to root out hate. Consider the elderly veterans who put their lives on the line for this nation and who fought and sacrificed for Jeong's freedom. They are rewarded by our media, who inject her hate into our society. Just as dangerous as conveying the message that all people of a certain external characteristic are lazy, worthless, deficient, criminally inclined, it is just as dangerous to whip up a grievance against a whole group by saying they all have privileges and advantages on the basis of external characteristics. There are people in every single category, every single human category, who have members who come from backgrounds of incredible dysfunction, obstacles, struggles, suffering, immense personal adversity. There are also members within all human categories that have differing external characteristics who have experienced unbelievable advantages and privileges. This, I believe, is the essential battle today for our nation's character. It is the battle between those who favor judging all by the content of their character and condemning all hate, and those who encourage certain group hate depending on whose ox is being gored by the purveyors of identity politics. One thing I hope our leaders and media will come to comprehend is you cannot just say, well, we will encourage this kind of hate to this group now, and then we'll pivot, and maybe tomorrow we'll direct different hate to another group tomorrow. No. Your message of hate becomes as uncontrollable and destructive as a brush fire. It often starts small, it sparks, it jumps the barriers, it becomes a conflagration that can consume an entire society. We must reject judging people on the basis of race, sex, ethnicity. Rather, we must judge each person by their personal membership in the smallest minority, the individual. I could virtually give unlimited or limitless numbers of examples of this. They are replete throughout history, but of the innumerable examples, I have time for just a couple. In the 1930s and 40s, many Germans said the Jews had privilege, and they didn't differentiate between those of privilege or absolute destitution before the genocide. In 1990, the Rwandan genocide, the Hutus rose up against the Tutsis and genocided about 70% of the population because the demagogues preached the Tutsis had privilege. On this basis, the Tutsis were slaughtered by the Hutus, who hacked down their neighbors and friends of previous years with machetes, calling them cockroaches. Many inhabiting the commanding heights of society today, like media, professors, commentators, pundits, are complicit in the spread of uncontrolled venom as they message that this group or that group all have privilege. Tomorrow, the message could point to another group. Tomorrow, the group that they claim has privilege could be screaming victimhood, and off we go again on the merry-go-round of slaughter. Ayn Rand wrote very eloquently about this. Her words could apply to any group with external characteristics. Racism is the lowest, most crudely primitive form of collectivism. It is the notion of ascribing moral, social, or political significance to a person's genetic lineage. The notion that a person's intellectual and characterological traits are produced and transmitted by their internal body chemistry. This means, in practice, that a person is to be judged not by their character and actions, but by the character and actions of a collective of ancestors. When writing this speech, I thought very carefully, because I noticed with political correctness, all too often, people get attacked not for what they actually said, but for what someone claims they said, or what the media told an audience was said. Unfortunately, it has become imperative these days to have ideas of great consequence taped, so you don't get smeared by individuals who interpret your intent without the experience of what you actually said. Even worse than being demonized for what you said is being smeared for what you never said. People need to be cautious about personal interpretations of experts interpreting what a person said. One device used today to smear people is by saying, well, they didn't actually say thus and such, but that's what they meant. The popular smear today is saying, well, most people just can't discern and detect the dog whistle message, so I don't really need to report what the speaker's actually saying. I'll just repeat what their overall intent is. There certainly could be cases where a message could contain a special code, but too often today, I believe, the concept of the dog whistle is nothing more than a license to lie about what a speaker said. The demagogues will always be with us. They will always use any technique that works to empower themselves. Their modus operandi is to find the wedge, to divide, and then go for the jugular. God willing, we will learn to expose them and thwart their evil intentions. To conclude, I would just like to thank my long-suffering wife, Kathy, our 5 kids and 12 grandkids. Kathy says being married to Jim Runestad is one continuous process of getting used to things she had not expected. She will also tell you that we have been blissfully and happily married for 12 years. Then Kathy is quick to add, those 12 years were the first 12 years out of a 22-year marriage where Jim was not in politics. I also want to thank my incredible staff, Krista Vincent, Griffin Drew, for a phenomenal job. I also had Chris Wardell and Joe Martin did a great job. Christina from the communications and Alyssa from constituent relations, and also Aaron did a phenomenal job as our attorney for policy. I would like to thank Speaker Leonard for his incredible leadership and for appointing me to the chair of the Judiciary Committee. I want to thank my seatmate Shane Hernandez for 2 fun years, but it's imperative to let everyone know that half of the lies that Shane, Joe, and Mike tell, half of those lies are not true. Final observation, it'll be interesting to see who takes over for the media hound, for the termed out legislator who always carried a card in his wallet which said, I am a famous Michigan politician. In case of an emergency, please call a reporter. I also enjoyed many wonderful colleagues on both sides of the aisle, too many to mention, but a special shout out to my good friends Sheldon Neely and Fred Durhall. Most of you do not know that we have been almost inseparable since our first meeting here on the floor. In fact, we have been so inseparable that it sometimes takes the muscle of up to 6 sergeants at a time to pull us apart. I leave a warning to the freshmen that are coming in January that the freshman 15 may become permanent. The only thing that has gotten thinner on me is my hair. This has been one of the greatest experiences of my entire life. I would not trade it for anything. I wish everybody here the absolute best. God bless the United States of America, the state of Michigan, and every one of you. Thank you.